Hi, it's Anthony St. Clair, writer and author. I wanted to talk to you today about when I was once barely breathing on the roof of the world. About 14 years ago now, from when I record this in May of 2018, I was in Tibet. I had been overlanding throughout the Himalayan plateau with kind of a ragtag group of us. We were in Land Rovers. We were going over areas of the hills where I think the yaks were looking at us going, "What the hell are you doing here?" The culmination of this trip was a night that we spent at Everest Base Camp on the Tibetan side. So you're looking at the north face of the mountain from the base camp, which was at about 17,000 feet or 5,200 meters. It's way up in the air. You drive up there through kind of this glaciated small valley area. You're just surrounded by rock and ice everywhere. And with every kilometer, the air is getting thinner, and every breath feels like it's not doing the same work it used to. And it's kind of chilly. When we got there, I got to see Everest, world's tallest mountain. In the Tibetan, it's known as Chomolungma, which essentially translates to Mother Goddess of the Earth. I often refer to it now that way. For people watching this who are familiar with my fiction, you've probably noticed how mountains come up in just about every story that I write. Mountains are just part of who I am. I've pretty much always lived in valleys, so mountains have always been around me. The Appalachians of the South, the Highlands of Scotland, the Cascades of Oregon, the Himalayas of Asia, those are all part of me. They're dust, they're dirt waves washing through eternity essences, just in me. But so standing there 14 years ago in Tibet, on this little rise, looking out over this plain, and there, way up ahead, just this massive hunk of rock, Chomolungma, Mount Everest. I got to see it with my own eyes, not in a photo, not in a video. Me. Standing there before something that is, the mostest, the greatest, the biggest, etc., that's part of our world, it's quite a sight. Where we were at the time, there's still people who are climbing the mountain, like the plain that we were kind of looking out over. You could look down and see just all these brightly colored tents, flags from different countries, all people who were, going to be having their go at the mountain. Personally, it's not something I've ever wanted to do. I respect greatly people who do climb mountains or want to climb mountains, but I'm not so much in their ranks. The thing that stands out to me most, though, was this night that we were there. It's incredibly cold. It is so hard to breathe. Just walking to the bathroom was hard. Like, I cannot imagine what it must be like to be hanging on that mountain. And this is just a base camp. This isn't even, what is it, I think over 26,000 feet is where you enter the death zone, where the body just literally starts to die from lack of oxygen. I cannot imagine how hard it must be when just walking to the loo took everything I had. Speaking of the bathrooms, let's just say those latrines were rather overflowing. But despite the cold and the thin air and the poo, this one night was one of the most memorable of my life. So that night, as it was getting late, I went out. I wanted to go up the little hill one more time. It was a clear night, and I went up this little rise, the same rise where earlier I'd been looking out over the field where all the tents were. And ahead of me is Everest. And going up the side of Everest is not a climber, it's the moon. Full moon. Rising up over the top of the world's tallest mountain. Now, this is probably the vagaries of memory and probably the thin air, but I swear the moon was bigger. In my mind, it's always as if it was about half the size of the mountain, and I know that's not literally true, but standing there, watching the full moon rise over Everest, I thought of how grateful I was that I was getting to see this, take it into myself, carry it with me, have it become part of me. Think of how few people get to see that mountain. I feel so fortunate that I got to. It's something that I carry with me. Now I have 2 children, I'm married, and we are looking at different adventures we want to take with our kids as they get a little older. When I was talking about this with my son earlier, we were looking at photos of Mount Everest, and he was telling me that if he were there, he would go up first thing in the morning and put on his snow clothes and make ice blocks and build a snowman and then climb the mountain. He just might. And that's in part because I got to stand there all those years ago, feel that sense of gratitude and adventure, and now try to carry it forward into those I care about most. That's just a little story I wanted to share with you today from some of my own travels. I hope it helps you think about your own adventures and journeys and the places you want to go and the things you want to do. Have a great day. If you want to learn more about me, Anthony St. Clair, you can go to my website, anthonystclair.com, and you'll find my books and different articles I write and all sorts of other stuff. You can also sign up for my mailing list and get a free book of Forever the Road, which actually Everest features in quite a bit. So I will see you next time, and may all your adventures